10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 402. Hey, everybody, welcome back to episode 402. Hope spring is getting off to a good start on everybody in the Northern Hemisphere's part. We are going to dive into a new tune today. So I just recently posted a little breakdown on the Tad Dameron tune Ladybird on my YouTube channel. I'd like everybody that's listening to this to basically just start there. That way you can get a handle on sort of what we're dealing with and the breakdown. And then I want to talk about some specific things on this tune and be able to dive a little bit deeper into this important jazz standard. This one's just going to be a month-long series, but we're going to talk about some of the things that I think are the most important in this. But today, what we are going to do is we're going to go back to the concept of key center soloing, and we're just going to start there. I think that's such a great place to start. And, we've been talking about this on Sweet Sue and then Have You Met Miss Jones? So it makes sense for us to spend just 1 week as sort of like an introduction to this tune, talking about how we can solo with key centers. And then we'll get more specific as we move through this month and talk about some of the individual challenges. That's probably a bad word. Some of the individual opportunities that this tune provides. I think that's a much more constructive term. So basically, that's how the month is going to go. But today, we want to just talk about how to approach this in the simplest way possible. Now, over the past 2 series that we did on Sweet Sue and then the one we did on Have You Met Miss Jones, I've started by actually presenting you the melody. But this month, I'm not going to do that. Learning the melody is your responsibility. A lot of people do play this melody pretty straight up. So use recordings to learn the melody to this. And then we're going to kind of skip that step, or we're not skipping that step. We're skipping me guiding you through that step. And we're just going to go straight to our key center soloing. So if you go to the YouTube video, which I'll drop a link to that in the description of this episode, you'll have a full breakdown on what the actual chords are and like a little analysis on those chords. So I'm going to jump straight into how we can simplify those chords into key centers. Okay. So if we think about this form, let me just play it through once on piano so that you can actually hear what it sounds like. It'll put the sound of the actual form into our heads. And then we'll start talking about key centers and stuff like that. Okay, great. So that should just like get it in your head and get you refamiliarized with the sound of that tune. So of course it's 16 bars, and what I mentioned in the video is that there's really not a lot of structure to it, right? Like we could go through and try to label things A and B, but I think this just works better as kind of like a through composed form that has very distinct sections to it, but we don't need to label them. All right. Okay. So if you have the sheet in front of you that I provided you with this week, you'll see that I've basically just written out some big, broad key centers. So for the first 2 bars, we're in concert C. So you want to just deal with the sound of concert C major, sort of whatever that means to you. In the last round of episodes, we spent such a long time talking about organizing the tones in a major key in some different ways, about like starting to develop a conception of the fact that C major means so many different things. It could mean scale. It could mean the scale rearranged. It could mean triads. It could mean seventh chords. And so many of the structures of like what goes on when we're actually paying attention to chord to chord playing just have to do with ways of rearranging that scale. So go into it with that mindset. Okay. All right. So now when we get to bar 3, we have an option here, right? We could think about this key as sort of C natural minor. So that means C with a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7, right? Uh, and that is going to allow us to play some, for lack of a better term, agreeable stuff over measures 3 and 4. But our other option is, we realize when we start to deal with C natural minor, we're basically just dealing with the 6th mode of the E flat major scale. So this is interesting, right? Because we are totally free to think about it either way, because it results in being the same collection of notes, the same key signature at the end of the day. But what you might want to explore over the week when you're trying your hand at some of this key center soloing is you may want to think about, is there a difference in what I play if I approach it as C natural minor or if I approach it as E flat major, right? They're both technically correct, but that would be a really interesting thing to observe. But basically that lasts for 2 bars. So bars 3 and 4, C natural minor or E flat major. Of course, I'm speaking in concert. Okay. So then bar 5 and 6, we come back to the key of C major. So we know what to do there. Now, in bars, I'm losing my train of thought here. So in bars 7, 8, 9, 10, we want to think about the key of concert A flat major, because that's where that's going. Everything in those 4 bars directly relates to that key of A flat major. So think about how you're going to organize your pitches, what you're going to play, and mostly, more than anything, just experiment with it. Okay, so that brings us to bar 10. Now, in bar 10, I think a really sort of simple and easy thing to think about is to think about the key of G major, concert G major, and start experimenting with that. That definitely will not lead you astray, okay? All right, so that brings us down to bar 13. And here, what we want to think about for 2 bars is we want to think that we're back in the key of C. All right? And then the end, the last 2 bars, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because there's no way to really sort of like gloss over these 2 bars because there's all these parallel major chords happening. So this is an example of where it would really help us right off the bat, even though we're trying to simplify, to keep everything in there. So what we want to think about for 2 beats at the beginning of bar 15 is we want to think about C major. And then we want to think about E flat major for 2 beats. Then we want to go to A flat major. And then we want to go to D flat major. And then we come back around to the top. C. Now those are just simple triads. I can fill them out a little bit more by playing like this. But in effect, what we're doing, right, is we're trying to simplify this tune. But that is a place where I don't think it actually pays to simplify anything. So how are you going to sort of handle this? Well, I'll give you a couple pieces of advice. First of all, you just really need to know those scales. So you need to know concert C major scale, E flat major scale, A flat major scale, and D flat major scale. That would be the place to start because you're just not going to have much facility if you can't play those major scales, right? So if you look at that and it terrifies you, start there. Start by just, getting familiar with those scales. The second thing that you would want to do is now maybe put them in time, but go insanely slow. And it would probably pay to focus on those 2 bars and those 2 bars alone for at least a little while. So, I'm giving you permission, take them out of context and with a metronome really slow, go ahead and just explore what that looks like going from key to key. And then your other option would be to just turn off the metronome entirely and just sit with those 4 keys for a bit, and just see if you can find any connection points between them. See if you can, as seamlessly as possible, flow from one key into the other, but not putting any restrictions on yourself as far as like, oh, it's only 2 beats, right? That would probably be a really effective way to spend your time. That will eventually lead us toward, coming up with some really cool stuff over those last 2 bars. So that's about it. That's what I want you to spend your week doing is key center soloing and just starting to be able to feel your way through. And remember, with the key centers, it's really important to trust your ear because we have the option of playing all those different structures, all those different starting notes. We have a lot of freedom. And we want to use that freedom to its fullest potential, trust our ears, all that kind of stuff. But really, it's going to come down to just kind of doing this every day for a week, and sort of thinking about how you did, how you approached it. Is there a different way to approach it? But it should be all be pretty simple because they're just these big key center things, and we're just mostly playing like major and minor scales. Okay. For the Patreon members, I am going to provide some trading tracks, 2 trading tracks where we trade 4s, and that'll just give you another tool to pursue this key center soloing thing where you can bounce off of somebody else and have just a fun way to practice things. That'll give you a different perspective hearing somebody else in your ear. So if you're new to the show and you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about, Patreon members, that's basically how we support the show, is in the form of small monthly donations from listeners just like you. So if you want more information on that and you want those tools that I was talking about, you can head over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up, and you'll get instant access to all of that stuff. I also have all the materials from the YouTube video over there. So you're getting a lot if you choose to support us. So again, that's 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners or patreon.com. Just search up the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson podcast. Shout out to all the new patrons this week. We've had a serious influx of people. So thank you to George, Eric, Joe, Phil, Alvaro, Tom, and Lewis for signing up to support the show. We really appreciate you. And I hope you're getting something out of those materials. All right. So key center soloing this week. That's it. Learn the melody on your own, and then we'll drill down a little bit and talk about some of the unique things that this tune presents to us throughout the month. Have a good one, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.